begins with a dead antelope. August 22nd, 1986. Morning. Dr. Emmanuel Ingu Mb is cycling home through the hills of northwest Cameroon. He has spent the night in a nearby town, a routine trip, the kind he has made 100 times. And then, a dead antelope, lying by the road. Unusual, but not alarming. He ties it to his bicycle, carries on. But then, another dead animal, and another, and another. The doctor picks up speed. Something is wrong. He doesn't know what yet, but something is very wrong. He reaches the village of Nyos, less than a kilometer from the lake, and stops. There are bodies everywhere, not wounded, not burned, not bruised, just lying there, in the streets, in doorways, in their beds, as if the entire village had simply stopped mid-moment. A mother beside her child, a man at his threshold, children on the ground as if they had just fallen asleep. Not a single living soul. MBI doesn't understand what he's looking at. He is a doctor. He has seen death before, but not like this. Never like this. He turns his bicycle around and rides back to Womb as fast as he can. He will remember this morning for the rest of his life. What he didn't know was that a veil of death had already spread across the entire valley. 1,700 people. Gone. In a single night. Lake Nyos sits inside the crater of an ancient volcano in the Oku volcanic plain of northwest Cameroon. Still. Beautiful. The kind of place that looks painted, not real. Surrounded by green hills. Fed by rain and silence. Locals called it a sacred lake. They believed a spirit lived beneath its surface. They were right. They just didn't know what kind. Beneath the lake bed, deep underground, magma. Not erupting, not moving, just exhaling. Slowly releasing carbon dioxide upward through the rock. CO2. Colorless. Odorless. Heavier than air. In a normal lake, this gas would rise, mix with the upper layers, and escape into the atmosphere. But Lake Nyos is not a normal lake. The tropical climate keeps the water temperature unusually consistent, from surface to floor. No seasonal mixing, no temperature shifts to stir the layers. The warm water stays on top, the cold water stays below, and between them, a wall, invisible, permanent. The CO2 rising from the magma below has nowhere to go. It dissolves into the deep water under enormous pressure, like gas in a bottle of soda. Layer by layer, year after year, decade after decade, nobody sees it, nobody measures it, nobody warns anyone. The villages around Lake Nyos were small. Farming communities, subsistence life, cattle, crops, children playing near the water. Nyos, Subum, Cha, Fang, Mashi. Maybe 10,000 people living in that valley. Going about their evening. August 21st, 1986. A Thursday. It was around 9 p.m. when the lake moved. Survivors would later say they heard a rumbling, a low thunder, coming from the water. It lasted a few minutes, then came a smell. Gunpowder, rotten eggs. And then, nothing. Something beneath the water had shifted. A landslide, a cold rain, a pressure change nobody can fully explain even today. Whatever it was, it disturbed the deep layers. The water surged upward, and the pressure holding all that dissolved CO2 in place vanished. What happened next took less than a minute. The lake exploded. Not fire, not lava, gas. Between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide erupted from the surface. A column of water shot 100 meters into the air. A wave, 25 meters high, crashed into the hillside. The lake turned white. And then the gas fell. CO2 is heavier than air. It doesn't rise. It sinks. It flows like water, downhill, into valleys, through gaps in the terrain. It follows the land, and the land around Lake Nyos slopes downward, directly into the villages. The cloud moved at 50 kilometers per hour, low to the ground, invisible, a river of suffocation rolling through the dark. No smell, no warning, no sound. People were sitting in their homes, eating, sleeping, talking, and then nothing. Carbon dioxide doesn't poison, it replaces oxygen. At concentrations above 10%, convulsions, coma, death, and it happened faster than the brain could process it. No panic, no struggle. People simply stopped. Mid-conversation, mid-meal, mid-breath. The gas traveled 25 kilometers from the lake. It filled every low-lying space. Homes, valleys, cattle pens. In Nyos, nearly everyone died. In Cha, nearly everyone died. In Subum, nearly everyone died. Cattle dropped in the fields where they stood. Birds fell from trees. Insects disappeared. Some bodies were found lying peacefully in their beds. Others were found in streams, in the forest, running from something invisible that they could not outrun. One survivor woke up the next morning lying on the ground outside his home. He didn't know how he got there. He didn't remember falling. He just woke up. And around him were bodies, his neighbors, his cattle, his family. He thought the world had ended. In his world, it had. The survivors who lived were mostly farmers. On the hills, above the gas line, the cloud had passed below them in the dark. They came down the next morning into a valley of the dead. Thousands of bodies, no visible wounds, no blood. Clothes marked with strange greasy red stains. Carbonic acid burns from CO2 mixing with moisture on their skin. Just people lying where they had been the moment it happened. Like a photograph of a normal evening. Frozen forever. The official death toll: 1,746 people, 3,500 livestock, and a valley that would never fully come back. Dr. Mby's report reached the governor. The governor reached the president. President Paul Biya ordered immediate action. But Lake Nyos is remote. The roads were bad. It took 2 days for the army and medical teams to arrive. What they found was not a disaster scene, it was an apocalypse. Bodies were everywhere. No one understood what had caused it. No fire, no explosion damage, no visible enemy. Some soldiers thought it was chemical weapons. Some thought it was a volcanic event. The local population had no doubts. The lake was cursed. 3 years before the disaster, a prominent chief, the lake chief, had died. On his deathbed, he had designated his finest cow for ritual sacrifice. But after his death, his relatives refused to give away their best animal. They substituted a smaller one. And the people believed, from the afterlife, the chief's fury had brought this. The scientists believed the lake had something to do with it too. Just a different kind of fury. Within days, French, American, and Cameroonian researchers arrived. They took samples. They measured. They pieced it together. Water samples from Lake Nyos showed carbon dioxide levels far beyond anything recorded before. The red color of the lake, no longer its familiar blue, was dissolved iron, pulled up from the lakebed by the force of the eruption. Only one event could explain everything: a Limnic eruption. A term most of them had to create, because it had barely been documented before. 2 years earlier, August 15, 1984, nearby Lake Manoon had done the same thing. 34 people died. It was smaller, quieter. The world barely noticed. Nobody connected it to Nyos. Nobody warned anyone. Now the world had a name for it: Limnic Eruption, a lake so supersaturated with dissolved gas that a single disturbance, a landslide, a rain, a cold current, can trigger a catastrophic release. There are only 3 lakes in the world known to behave this way. All 3 are in Cameroon: Lake Nyos, Lake Manoon, Lake Kivu. Lake Kivu sits on the border of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It holds 300 times more gas than Lake Nyos. 2 million people live on its shores. After 1986, scientists began working on a solution: not to drain the lake, not to move the villages, but to slowly, carefully release the gas. They designed degassing pipes. Long tubes dropped to the floor of the lake, using the pressure difference to draw deep water to the surface, where the CO2 could escape in controlled amounts, like letting air out of a balloon, gently, before it bursts again. The first tube was tested in 1995. It worked. A full pipe was installed in 2001. 2 more in 2011. The CO2 levels in the lake began dropping. Slowly, measurably. The work continues. But the villages around Lake Nyos were never fully resettled. For years, the government restricted return. Some survivors never went back. Others, displaced, scattered across the region, still wait, still hope, still ask when they can go home. The lake itself has slowly changed. The rust-red color it turned after the eruption, iron pulled from the deep, has faded over the years. The water is returning to blue, slowly, like a wound healing. 1,746 people, not killed by war, not killed by disease, not killed by famine, killed by a lake, by the earth breathing in a way it wasn't supposed to, by gas that had been waiting longer than anyone had been alive to remember it. There is no villain in this story, no decision that caused it, no one to blame. Just a planet doing what planets do: shifting, exhaling, releasing pressure, indifferent to the lives arranged on its surface. The survivors built a memorial, a small one, near where the village of Nyos used to be. They didn't want the world to forget. They don't want to forget either, even though forgetting would be so much easier. Memory is the only thing that survives everything, even a lake that kills.